In a world obsessed with appearances, status, and surface-level success, there's one belief that has quietly crept into the minds of men everywhere. The idea that women only care about money. You've heard it. Maybe you've even believed it. That unless you drive a luxury car, wear expensive watches, or flash the kind of lifestyle that screams, "I made it," you'll be invisible to the women you admire. But let me ask you, has chasing that belief ever left you feeling more confident, more fulfilled? Or has it left you stuck, trying to buy your way into someone's heart? See, there's a difference between truth and noise, and the noise has gotten louder than ever. The truth is, while financial stability does matter, no woman wants to build a life on shaky ground. It's not the ultimate deciding factor. It's not the spark that ignites lasting attraction, and it's certainly not the foundation of real connection. In fact, the traits that women are truly drawn to often have little to do with wealth, and everything to do with who you are when the money is taken out of the equation. Let's step back for a moment and look at this from a deeper, more human lens. Women, just like Minari, biologically wired to seek out what feels safe, solid, and real. Their attraction isn't just emotional, it's instinctual. It responds to signals you might not even know you're sending. Signals that say, this man knows who he is. This man moves with purpose. This man doesn't need approval to act with clarity. That kind of presence can't be bought. So, why do some men, even without the big bank account or the big personality, consistently draw women in? Why do they seem to carry a gravity, a presence that makes others lean in and listen? It's not luck. And it's not manipulation. It's character. It's energy. It's traits like quiet confidence, emotional stability, and purposeful direction. These aren't tricks. They're not pickup tactics. They're not formulas you fake your way through. They are foundations, habits of mind, patterns of behavior, and ways of being that anyone can develop if they're willing to do the work. And here's the good news. No matter where you are in life, how much you make, or what your past looks like, these traits are within your control. You don't need to be born into wealth or power to become deeply attractive. What you do need is the courage to master yourself. And that is the art of becoming high value. In today's video, we're going to explore 6 powerful traits that women secretly value more than money. These are not the loud qualities. They're not the obvious ones. But they are the ones that linger. The ones that earn respect in silence. The ones that make her feel something before she even knows why. If you've ever wondered why some men can walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word, this is your answer. Because being a high-value man has nothing to do with flashing status, and everything to do with mastering presence. So stay with me. What you're about to learn isn't just about attraction. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your direction, and your strength in a world that tries to drown men in noise. We're not here to play games. We're here to return to the truth. A truth the ancient Stoics knew well, that power doesn't start with what you own. It starts with what you own within. Let's begin. Part 1. High-value presence. The quiet power that speaks without a word. So stay with me, because what we're about to explore could quietly shift everything how you see yourself, and how women instinctively respond to you, often without even knowing why. Let's dive into the first trait. High value presents a form of biological attractiveness that isn't loud, showy, or artificial. It's not about what you say, it's about who you are. When you say nothing at all, think about it. Have you ever seen a man walk into a room and suddenly the atmosphere changes? He doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't need designer clothes or some flashy entrance. Yet, people notice. They pause, they glance, they feel something. Not because of what he does, but because of how he is. This is the essence of high-value presence, and it's far more ancient than we give it credit for. You see, deep in the architecture of the female mind, beyond social norms and modern dating trends, is something primal and unspoken: search for security, steadiness, and strength. Women aren't just analyzing faces or tallying net worth. On a subconscious level, their sense: is this man grounded? Can he be trusted in the chaos? Can he lead without needing to dominate? This isn't about seduction. It's about biological recognition. Evolution has fine-tuned women to respond to the signals that promise safety, stability, and survival. A man with purpose, one who moves with intention and doesn't shrink under pressure, sends out those signals without even trying. He's composed. He stands tall. His voice doesn't quiver. His eyes don't dart. He doesn't seek validation. He radiates certainty. And that, right there, is magnetic in a way no expensive watch can match. You don't need to be the richest or most physically imposing man in the room. But you do need to command respect. And here's the kicker: it usually starts with other men. When a man is seen as competent, trustworthy, and self-possessed by his peers, it broadcasts something primal. This man is capable. He can lead. He can protect. He can stand firm when things fall apart. That reputation isn't built on noise. It's built on consistency. And women notice. She might first catch how you move deliberate, unrushed. Maybe it's your tone, steady, not forced. Maybe it's how you handle a difficult moment, how you hold your position with quiet dignity while others spiral into drama. These moments send a signal that you're not trying to impress her, you're just grounded in who you are. And ironically, that's what impresses her most. A high-value presence doesn't chase, doesn't prove, doesn't posture. It simply is. It pulls others in naturally, without theatrics. And the attraction it sparks runs deeper than charm or clever lines. It reaches something older, something ancestral, something that says, you are safe here, you are seen here, you don't have to carry it all alone. Think about the men who are remembered long after they've left the room. They weren't always the loudest. They weren't necessarily the most handsome, but they had something still. Something that couldn't be faked. A sense of self. A calm core. A quiet fire. That's presence. In today's world of noise and performance, that kind of energy is rare. And as with anything rare, it becomes valuable. Not because it tries to be, but because it doesn't try at all. And that's exactly why it works. So ask yourself this. Can you be felt without having to be heard? Because when a man is deeply presenting-heard, clear and unshaken, he doesn't need to say much. His energy speaks for him, and that energy stays with her. It lingers. It creates curiosity, trust, even admiration without ever needing to explain itself. That's your edge in a world built on overcompensation. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming someone you respect so deeply that others can't help but respect you too. Women don't fall for the noise. They fall for what's real. And real strength is always quiet. It doesn't ask for attention. It commands it, simply by showing up. So the next time you enter a room, ask yourself not, how do I get noticed? But, how do I carry myself in a way that can't be ignored? Because when presence is real, it speaks louder than words ever could. Part 2. Sociability and Influence. The quiet power of being trusted. Now let's move to the second trait women find far more compelling than money: sociability and influence. And no, we're not talking about being the loudest guy in the room, cracking jokes for attention, or putting on a performance. Real sociability isn't about taking up space. It's about making space for others to feel seen, valued, and comfortable in your presence. Have you ever watched a man walk through a room and naturally draw people toward him without raising his voice, without trying to impress? He doesn't steal the spotlight. He doesn't force conversations. He simply moves with ease, tuned in to the energy of the moment. He knows when to speak and when to listen. He makes others laugh, not because he's rehearsed punchlines, but because his presence is light. Because he's present. And here's what's powerful about that. Even if a woman can't quite articulate why she's drawn to that kind of man, her instincts know. They sense something. He's safe. He's in tune. He belongs. And that unspoken feeling is everything. You see, sociability isn't about being extroverted. It's not about dominating a room or commanding attention. It's about being emotionally available. It's about reading the moment, being generous with your attention, and knowing how to connect, not just talk. When a man connects easily with others, he sends a clear, evolutionary signal. I belong to the tribe. And in a very primal, biological way, that matters more than you think. Because in ancient times, being accepted by the tribe meant safety, strength, and survival. Women are still wired to notice this. A man who is embraced by others, respected by peers, trusted in a group, that's not just someone who's likable, that's someone who's reliable, vetted, safe to follow. That's the kind of man women lean toward, not because he's trying to win approval, but because his presence already has it. She notices when you walk into a room and people gravitate toward you. She sees when your friends laugh a little easier around you, when your presence softens tension rather than creates it. And even more important, she senses when you're respected by other men. Because social respect isn't about being flashy. It's about being solid. And that leads to what psychologists call social proof. When others enjoy your company, when they listen to you, follow your lead, or simply relax around you, you're communicating something far more valuable than status. You're showing her without saying a word that you know how to navigate the world, that you can form bonds, inspire loyalty, and move in harmony with others. And women notice that deeply. Why? Because it answers one of her most subconscious yet powerful questions. If I trust this man, will I be safe? Will I be understood? Will I be valued in the same way he values others? A man with strong social ties who is present, gracious, and steady in the company of others answers that question simply by being himself. But let's be honest, this kind of sociability doesn't come from memorizing conversation starters or acting confident. It comes from character. It starts with how you speak genuinely, not performatively. It's in how you ask real questions, how you listen with the intent to understand, not just to reply. It's remembering names, noticing the shy guy in the corner, holding space for someone else's story. True social influence is built in the small moments. It's when you lead without needing credit, when you encourage others to shine, without needing to dim their light. It's when you crack a clever remark that lightens the room, not to dominate attention, but to lift the mood. It's being tuned in, not turned up. And when you carry yourself that way, present, aware, and authentic, people feel it. They trust you. They want you around. And when a woman sees that trust others place in you, she doesn't just notice you, she believes in you. Let's get practical here. You don't need to be the guy who's always talking. You just need to be the guy who people trust to show up consistently, calmly, and kindly. Build your friendships. Invest in your circle. Be someone who others turn tono for entertainment, but for presence. Because in a world full of noise and surface-level chatter, a man who knows how to listen, how to connect, and how to lead with presence that's rare. And as we said before, what's rare becomes valuable. You want to be attractive? Start by being available emotionally. Show hair in the world that you're the kind of man who others naturally want to be around. And you'll find that women aren't just intrigued. They're drawn in because influence built on authenticity always wins over performance built on ego. And this leads directly into the next quality we're about to explore: purpose. Because once people begin to trust you, once you've built that quiet credibility through sociability, the next question becomes, where are you going? What drives you? What vision pulls you forward? And that, my friend, is where your true power begins to rise. Part 3. Purpose and mission. The magnetic power of a man with direction. So far, we've talked about presence and then about sociability. And naturally, once a woman feels your presence and notices how others respond to you, something quiet but powerful happens. Curiosity. She begins to wonder, what drives this man? What story is he writing with his life? And that curiosity is often the very first step towards something deeper. Because behind every magnetic man is not just charm or charisma, there's a deeper force at play. And that's purpose. Let's be clear. A man with purpose doesn't need to advertise it. You feel it before he ever says a word. It's in his walk, in the way he talks slow, deliberate, grounded. It's in the decisions he makes, the way he spends his time, and the way he protects his boundaries. He's not drifting, he's driven. He's not seeking approval, he's pursuing a mission. And that mission doesn't have to be some grand world-changing idea. It could be as grounded as building a business with integrity, leading a family with strength, or simply becoming a better version of himself one day at a time. But whatever his path, one thing is always true. He knows where he's going. And that clarity of direction? It's magnetic. Because in a world filled with confusion, aimlessness, and men who chase distractions just to feel alive, purpose stands out. It gives a man gravity. It centers him. A woman doesn't just want a man who moves. She wants a man who moves with intention. It's not the man with the loudest goals or the most impressive resume that earns her respect. It's the man whose life feels like it has a spine structure, vision, and meaning. You might be wondering, what if I don't know my purpose yet? What if I'm still figuring things out? That's okay. In fact, that's where it begins. Purpose is not something you find in a lightning bolt moment. It's something you build, slowly, brick by brick. And often, it starts with the smallest choices. Waking up on time, taking care of your health, learning a new skill, saying no to what wastes your time. Each of those small acts is a vote for who you're becoming. And with every vote, your direction gets clearer. Now here's the interesting thing. Women are deeply attuned to this kind of energy, not because they need to know every detail of your 5-year plan, but because they can feel the difference between a man who's drifting and a man who's driven. She pays attention to how you talk about your day, how you face setbacks, whether you fold under pressure or rise with it. She listens for whether your words are reactive or rooted. And even if she can't put her finger on it, she feels when you're grounded in something bigger than yourself. That's what creates trust. Because here's a truth that isn't talked about enough. A woman wants to feel that she can follow a man's lead not because he demands it, but because his direction feels trustworthy. If you're leading yourself well, she'll feel safe walking beside you. Not because you have all the answers, but because you carry the weight of your own life with strength and intention. And there's something deeply attractive about that. This kind of purpose-centered masculinity isn't about being perfect. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being anchored. A man with purpose doesn't avoid emotions, he channels them. He uses pain as fuel. He lets failure shape him, not shatter him. And he's not afraid to start small. Because he knows every big life is built on 1,000 quiet commitments. Here's a practical place to start. Ask yourself this. Middle. What do I want my life to stand for? Middle. What am I willing to struggle for? Middle. If my actions were all someone knew about me, what would they believe I value? Middle. You don't have to have perfect answers, but asking those questions, consistently living into them, will shape your path. And over time, you'll notice something shift. You'll stop chasing approval. You'll stop fearing rejection. Because your sense of self won't depend on how others see you, it'll come from within. And when a woman meets that version of you, the man who leads himself, who walks with intention and acts with clarity, she doesn't just admire you. She feels safe with you, emotionally, spiritually, even physically. Because in a chaotic world, that kind of grounded masculinity is rare. It's rare to meet a man who moves slowly when others rush, who chooses silence over performance, who builds rather than boasts. But when she meets that kind of man, he becomes unforgettable. Because he isn't trying to impress her. He's too busy building a life he doesn't want to escape from. And that, right there, is the foundation of attraction that lasts. So if you're wondering what to do next, don't look for a better pickup line. Look for a better path. Define it. Walk it. Own it. Because the man who knows where he's going doesn't need to ask for attention. He becomes the kind of man who earns it. Part 4. Emotional independence and trust. Why calm presence is the new power. Up to this point, we've talked about presence, sociability, and purpose. But none of these traits truly land. None of them truly feel safe to a woman unless they're rooted in something deeper, emotional independence. In a world where chaos is constant and anxiety runs high, stillness has become a rare virtue. And yet, it's in that very stillness that something essential is born. Trust. Trust doesn't come from clever words or declarations of confidence. It doesn't come from appearances or achievements. Trust comes when a man knows who he isn't, no longer needs to prove it. There's a kind of calm that tells her, without saying a word, you can exhale now. I've got this. And let's be honest, isn't that what we all want at some level? To feel that the person next to us is rooted, that they don't get swept away with every mood swing, every disagreement, every moment of uncertainty. Because here's the simple truth. When you believe in yourself, she doesn't have to question you. When your self-trust is real, it becomes an atmosphere, one she can breathe in, one she can relax into. This kind of confidence isn't something you perform, it's something you live. And when it's authentic, it speaks louder than anything you could ever say. She feels it in the pause between your sentences, in the steadiness of your gaze, in the way you hold your ground, not with arrogance, but with clarity. And that clarity becomes her peace. Now let's take it even further. Because emotional independence isn't just about how you feel about yourself. It's also about how you lead. Because in every relationship, whether it's romantic, professional, or even spiritual, there is an unspoken rhythm, a give and take, a quiet dance between energy and direction. And in that dance, a woman naturally senses, will he lead or will I be forced to? This isn't about dominance or control. It's about something far more subtle and profound, direction. It's about a man who knows how to step forward, not aggressively, not impulsively, but deliberately, calmly, with certainty, even when the path isn't perfectly clear. Because leadership in love doesn't mean taking over her life. It means being someone she can move with, someone who's already moving forward with or without applause. That's what gives her the freedom to soften, to let go of control, to finally stop carrying everything on her own. She may be strong. She may be fiercely independent. But even the strongest women want to rest sometimes. Not because they're weak, but because strength also deserves safety. And when a man carries himself with steady, quiet leadership, she can finally rest. And you see it in the smallest things. You see it when he chooses a restaurant without going back and forth 100 times. When he plans the date instead of saying, "whatever you want." When he senses that something's off and leans in with, "what's on your mind?" Instead of avoiding the discomfort. These may seem minor on the surface, but they speak volumes about a man's emotional depth and his willingness to carry the moment not just for himself, but for both of them. Because here's the thing. When a man hesitates, a woman will naturally fill that space. Not because she wants to, but because she has to. It's instinctive. It's protective. It's survival. But when you lead with confidence, when you provide clear direction and emotional consistency, she no longer has to be on high alert. She can trust. She can exhale. She can just be. And that's what draws her closer every time. Not your job title, not your car, not your Instagram following. It's the quiet steadiness that says, "I know who I am. I'm here. I've got this. And I've got you, too." This kind of leadership doesn't start in big dramatic moments. It starts in the day-to-day, the consistency of your routines, the way you handle minor frustrations, how you speak about your goals, the way you hold boundaries not to punish but to protect what matters. Leadership begins when you say what you mean, when you stand by your decisions, when you adjust course not to please everyone, but because you're aiming to improve. And you don't do it to impress her. You do it because it's who you are becoming. Now, let's talk about safety. Because this is where it all comes together. A woman can't fully soften if she's constantly unsure. If she has to guess where you stand, wonder how you'll react, or feel like she's managing the relationship alone as she can't rest. But when your actions speak louder than your promises, when your decisions create clarity rather than confusion, when your presence stays steady, even when life gets messy, she doesn't just notice you, she trusts you. She feels safe not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. And that kind of safety, that's what builds intimacy. That's what creates long-term connection. So, let me leave you with this. If you want to become the kind of man who magnetizes the right kind of woman, start with your stillness. Start with how you respond when things don't go your way, with how you hold yourself when no one's watching, with how you lead not with noise, but with presence. Because when a woman senses that you carry the moment with grace, that you make decisions with calm conviction, and that you remain grounded when pressure rises, she doesn't have to guide. She doesn't have to fix. She doesn't have to fill in the emotional gaps. She gets to be. She gets to trust. She gets to lean in. And that more than looks, money, or clever lines is what makes you unforgettable. Part 5. Purpose, calm assertiveness, and long-term vision. There's something deeply powerful about a man who moves through the world with calm intent. Not perfection, not noise, but presence with purpose. And that's where we arrive at the fifth trait: purpose. Not just any purpose, but a mission, a reason for being, a long-term vision that drives everything he does. Because let's face it, we all know the difference between a man who's just drifting and a man who's building something. A man with purpose doesn't just get out of bed to get by. He rises with direction. He walks with clarity. He speaks like he knows where he's going, even if the path isn't fully laid out yet. And that energy? It's magnetic, especially to women. But it's not because he's chasing money, or trying to impress, or collecting achievements like trophies. It's because he's becoming the kind of man who answers to something deeper than validation or applause. Women are often drawn to this without even fully understanding why. It's not something you see, it's something you feel. That quiet fire in his eyes, the certainty behind his decisions, the rhythm in his steps that says, "I'm on my way, with or without you." This is not about being cold or dismissive. It's about being anchored. Because when a man is anchored to his purpose, he becomes more than just interesting. He becomes compelling. He starts to radiate a kind of energy that others want to be near. It's not ego, it's alignment. Ask yourself this: what's the mission you're on? What's the work that would still matter to you even if no one clapped? What is your reason for showing up not just today, but 10 years from now? These aren't casual questions. They're foundational. Because without answers, you risk becoming a man who floats from one distraction to the next. And distraction is the quiet death of greatness. Now let's get real for a second, because wanting something isn't enough. Desire without direction is daydreaming. Purpose requires clarity. And clarity is born from questions that most people avoid. What do you want your life to stand for? What's the legacy you're willing to work for in silence? What values are non-negotiable, even when no one's watching? When you start living in alignment with your answers, everything changes. You stop chasing. You start choosing. And that shift, that internal flip from wandering to walking forward, it transforms you. Suddenly, your actions feel intentional. Your words carry weight. And your setbacks? They don't define you, they refine you. And here's where it all ties back to attraction. Women aren't drawn to perfection. They're not scanning for flawless looks or scripted lines. They're looking often unconsciously for a man with direction. A man they can trust, to steer, to build, to weather the storm without losing himself. Because when a man knows his purpose, a woman doesn't have to become his purpose. And that is where freedom and trust begin. She doesn't want to be your everything. She wants to be part of something that already means everything to you. That's why men on a mission, men who are creating, building, striving, tend to be so captivating. Not because of status, but because of substance. You're not just filling space in the world. You're carving your name into it. Purpose gives you direction. It makes your yeses more powerful and your nos more certain. It keeps you moving when others get stuck. And it shines through in every corner of your life, in how you handle adversity, how you speak about your dreams, and how you treat the people around you. But don't confuse purpose with productivity. Purpose isn't about being busy. It's about being aligned. It could look like building a business that actually helps people, or showing up for your family as a steady and present father, or dedicating yourself to becoming the strongest, clearest, most grounded version of who you were meant to be. Purpose isn't found in noise. It's discovered in silence when you finally ask yourself, what matters enough to suffer for? Because here's the truth. Comfort never changed the world, but conviction did. And when you live with conviction, when your actions point to something beyond yourself, you become a man who doesn't just live, you inspire. You inspire trust, respect, and yes, deep, lasting attraction. Because in a culture of short attention spans and constant stimulation, a man with long-term vision is rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. So if you want to become that man, begin here. Stop living for likes. Start living for legacy. Stop chasing pleasure. Start building presence. Ask yourself not what feels good now, but what will still matter when the applause fades. A man with a clear purpose doesn't need to shout. His direction speaks for itself. He doesn't waver when others question him because he's not chasing popularity. He's pursuing truth. And that kind of man-steady, intentional, and grounded in vision is unforgettable. Because ultimately, purpose isn't just about success. It's about significance. It's about turning your time on this earth into something that echoes long after you're gone. And when a woman sees that, when she feels it in how you move, how you choose, how you lead, she doesn't just notice you. She respects you. Because deep down, we all want to walk beside someone who's going somewhere. Someone who's building something real. Someone who isn't just existing but living with fire in his soul. So find your purpose. Own it. Live it. And the right people, including the right woman, will not only see it, they'll want to be part of it. Part 6. Self-control and emotional stability. Let's talk about something most men overlook, yet it's one of the most powerful signals of strength a man can radiate. Self-control. In a world where so many people react before they think, where tempers flare at every inconvenience, and emotions get broadcasted like entertainment, there's something magnetic about a man who remains calm, who stays composed, who doesn't let the world shake his center. That kind of emotional stability? It's rare. And what's rare gets noticed. Because here's the truth most men miss. Control is not about what you dominate on the outside. It's about what you master on the inside. It's about the pause between impulse and action. The breath before the outburst. The choice to lead yourself before trying to lead anyone else. Women pay attention to this far more than you might realize. Not because they expect you to be emotionless, but because they crave emotional safety. And only a grounded man can provide that. See, anyone can be composed when things go smoothly. But a high-value man reveals himself in the fire, in the argument, in the pressure. When things don't go his way, and yet he chooses patience over pettiness, strategy over reaction, dignity over drama. That's when a woman leans in. Not because you raised your voice, but because you didn't need to. She sees that you can stay steady when things get messy, that you won't spiral when she expresses her emotions, that you won't punish her for being vulnerable. She doesn't have to manage your ego, your temper, or your need for control. And that kind of man makes her exhale, because she finally feels like she can just be, without having to tiptoe, without second-guessing, without bracing for an emotional storm. Self-control is quiet power. It's choosing to be unshakable not because you don't feel anything, but because you've learned to channel your emotions, not be ruled by them. And make no mistake, this is a skill. No one is born with perfect composure. It's something you build day by day, moment by moment. It starts when you refuse to let your anger drive your words. When you feel fear but still move forward with grace. When you stop letting other people's chaos decide your peace. You develop it through daily practices, meditation, journaling, breath work, stoic reflection, working out whatever it takes to keep your emotions anchored to clarity instead of chaos. Because here's a universal truth: if you can't lead yourself through pressure, no one will trust you to lead them. That includes women, especially women. She may never say it out loud, but deep down she's always asking, can he hold the weight of my emotions? Can he stay present when I'm not okay? Can he be my calm when I feel like falling apart? And if the answer is, yes, she'll feel safe to be feminine, expressive, open, because your stability invites her softness. Your restraint creates the space for her to feel, without fear. And this doesn't mean you're always stoic and silent. Emotional strength isn't the absence of feeling, it's the integration of it. You feel deeply, but you don't get lost in it. You express, but never explode. You listen, but you don't absorb chaos that isn't yours to carry. That's emotional mastery. And that's a man who's in control not of others, but of himself. Because the man who can hold himself in stillness is the man who earns trust in any storm. And trust me, women are biologically attuned to this. Evolution has wired them to look for men who can protect not just physically, but emotionally. A man who can remain composed signals safety, long-term security, and confidence under pressure. And when a woman sees you keeping your word, honoring your boundaries, navigating conflict with clarity rather than control, something shifts. She doesn't just admire you, she respects you. And respect real, deep respect is the foundation of lasting desire. So let me ask you directly, when life gets hard, who do you become? Do you escalate? Or do you elevate? Do you lash out? Or do you lean into patience? Do you seek to win or to understand? Because the man you become when life squeezes you, that's the man she truly sees. Not when you're winning, not when things are easy, but when things are heavy and you still choose grace. This is what separates the temporary from the timeless. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about owning them, understanding them, honoring them without being governed by them. A man who can stand in chaos and still choose peace is not weak. He is the definition of strong. And here's the real reward. When you master emotional regulation, you don't just gain her trust, you gain your own. Because now you know that no matter what life throws at you, you won't self-destruct. You won't ruin relationships. You won't sabotage your growth. You'll stand tall, grounded, present, unshakable. And that, my friend, is a kind of power no amount of money, status, or appearance could ever replace. That's the man women desire not just for a season, but for life. Part 7. Boundaries, assertiveness, and saying no without guilt. In a world that moves faster by the day, where everyone demands your attention, your energy, your time, there's one thing that separates a man who leads from one who's simply reacting. That thing is boundaries. The kind that are calm but firm, assertive without being aggressive. Boundaries that say, this is who I am, and this is how I move through the world. When a man has that calm, centered presence, it creates an anchor knot, just for himself, but for everyone around him. In a world filled with chaos and uncertainty, that kind of energy is magnetic. And the truth is, without boundaries, no self-improvement strategy can ever truly stick. Because if you can't say no to distractions, to noise, to the things and people pulling you off course, then you can't say yes to who you're meant to become. Self-improvement isn't about sculpting a perfect body or curating the right lifestyle. It's about becoming the kind of man who lives with intention. And intention begins where you draw the line. It begins when you stop pleasing everyone else and start choosing what aligns with your core. Let's get something straight. Upgrading your life starts from the inside out. You can dress sharp, drive the right car, lift weights 6 days a week, but none of it will matter if your foundation is weak. That foundation is your character built from discipline, clarity, and the courage to say no when it matters most. So what does real improvement look like? It begins with financial independence known as a show of wealth, but as a declaration of competence. You manage your money not to impress others, but because it's your responsibility. Because it shows the world and yourself that you can create stability. And women, they notice that. They see a man who can stand on his own, not as a provider of things, but as a provider of security, both practical and emotional. And then there's physical fitness, again, not for vanity, but for vitality, for strength, for the message it sends. I take care of myself. I do hard things, consistently, without needing praise. That dedication shows discipline. And discipline is attractive not because it looks good in the mirror, but because it speaks volumes about the man behind the muscle. He's dependable. He finishes what he starts. But let's talk about something that often gets overlooked: style and grooming. These aren't superficial concerns. They're signals of self-respect. When a man presents himself with intention, it shows he values who he is and where he's going. You don't need to wear designer brands or follow trends, but you do need to take pride in how you show up. Because like it or not, people, especially women, notice. And it doesn't stop there. You can look sharp, be fit, earn well, but if you can't communicate, you'll still be misunderstood. Connection lives in the words you choose and how you use them. The ability to express yourself clearly, to listen with genuine presence, to hold space for real conversation. That's what makes a woman feel seen. And when she feels seen, she feels safe. You want to lead? Then start by leading in your words. Speak when it adds value. Listen not to reply, but to understand. Because that's what high-value communication really is. It's not just being heard, it's creating resonance. It's knowing when to hold space, and when to challenge, when to joke, and when to stay still. And let's not forget, leadership doesn't begin in the boardroom. It begins in the everyday moments, in how you show up to life. Can you take initiative without being overbearing? Can you set direction without demanding control? Women are drawn to men who know how to lead, not just with strength, but with compassion, clarity, and consistency. Men who know where they're going and invite others along with grace, not force. Because in the end, what every woman truly seeks isn't just charm or confidence, it's trust. Can she trust your word, your energy, your direction, your emotional steadiness? That trust begins where your boundaries begin. And setting boundaries doesn't mean you build walls. It means you build a life that has structure, that's guided by your values, that isn't shaken by every demand, every invitation, every impulse. When you learn to say no without guilt, you reclaim your power. You stop living on autopilot, reacting to the world, and start living by choice. You protect your energy, your focus, your time, because you understand they're not infinite. You no longer need to explain or defend every decision, because your life, your values, and your mission speak for themselves. And here's the truth. Women don't want a man who says yes to everything. They want a man who knows what to say yes to and what must be left behind. That kind of clarity doesn't just attract, it commands respect. So if you're building yourself physically, financially, emotionally, don't forget the most essential skill of all: holding your line, calmly, quietly, but unshakably. You don't need to raise your voice or prove yourself to everyone. You just need to know your worth and live by it. And when you do that, when your boundaries are built not on ego, but on purpose, you become the kind of man no one forgets. Not because you demanded attention, but because you earned it. Part 8. The conclusion. Grow into the man she feels without a word. In the end, it's never been about perfection. It's about presence. Women are not searching for flawless men. They're drawn to those who are grounded in who they are, men who can stand confidently in their own skin, who walk with purpose, speak with clarity, and carry themselves with direction. Because in a world where so many are drifting, a man with rootedness becomes rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. Growth, not glamour, is what truly attracts. The journey of becoming not just impresses, what builds meaningful connection. The truth is, when you focus on evolving into a better version of yourself, you naturally start drawing in people, opportunities, and relationships that align with that higher version. Especially the right kind of woman. The one who's not just looking for a provider, but a partner. Not just money, but maturity. Not just ambition, but inner alignment. Let's be real. The idea that women only care about wealth? That's an outdated myth. And worse, it's a lie that's robbed too many men of their true power. Yes, financial stability matters. It reflects responsibility, focus, and the ability to create a life that's not chaotic. But it's not the money that makes you magnetics. It's the man you became to earn it. And even more so, it's who you are when no one's watching. When the cars are parked, when the noise fades, when all that's left is your energy. Because the qualities that speak the loudest to a woman are not flashy or loud. They're internal, they're deep, they're primal. Confidence and no arrogance, leadership not control, social influence see not approval seeking, purpose see not performance, emotional calm not coldness. These are the traits that echo through generations of human nature. These are the traits that women respond to instinctively, unconsciously, and powerfully. And here's the empowering part. These aren't gifts you're born with, they're skills. Skills that every man, no matter his background, no matter his starting point, can develop. Through discipline, through awareness, through reflection and action, through daily choices that compound over time. As you invest in these qualities, something changes not just in how women see you, but in how you see yourself. You stop chasing. You start attracting. You stop proving. You start embodying. And without saying a word, the world begins to take notice. Because a man with presence doesn't need to beg for respect. He lives in a way that commands it. So let go of the illusion that attraction is all about looks or wealth. Yes, those things may catch someone's attention for a moment, but it's your depth, your direction, and your self-possession that make them stay. That's what creates bonds that aren't just exciting, but lasting. Here's what matters most. Your ability to be calm when others are chaotic, to listen when others are loud, to lead with clarity when others freeze, to say no when it costs you comfort and yes when it costs you fear. That's how trust is built. That's how respect is earned. And that's how you become unforgettable, not just to women, but to yourself. Because ultimately, this journey isn't about dating. It's about becoming. Becoming a man who lives with conviction, who wakes up with purpose, who loves not out of fear or need but from strength. And if you're wondering where to start with one habit, one trait, one commitment to growth. Confidence in conversation, boundaries in relationships, discipline with your time. Choose one thing and master it, then build from there, day by day, quietly, steadily. Soon enough, you'll look in the mirror and see a man who doesn't have to try to be valuable. He simply is. So let me ask you this. What trait are you working on right now? What change have you made in yourself that shifted your relationship 7 just a little? I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Share your insight, your wins, your lessons. You never know who you might inspire by simply being real. And if this video gave you a new lens, a deeper understanding of what truly attracts and connects, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this journey doesn't end here. We've only scratched the surface of self-mastery, high-value living, and the ancient wisdom that helps us become the men we were meant to be. Until next time, stay grounded, stay purposeful, and above all, stay true to the man you're building. See you in the next one. Until then, keep building, keep leading, and remember, your presence speaks before you ever say a word.